This week on Brian Ross Investigates, new clues tonight in the search for the man known as the Zodiac serial killer, a case that has fascinated movie makers and crime sleuths for more than 50 years.
I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper.
He wants his code in the afternoon edition.
Now, a coded message sent by the killer to a San Francisco newspaper has finally been cracked, not by the FBI, but by a team of amateur code breakers.
A code-breaking team from the U.S., Australia, and Belgium may have finally unlocked this riddle.
We're joined by one of the men who did it, and by a former FBI crime profiler. Could this breakthrough finally solve the Zodiac Killer mystery? Plus, as the first shipments of the COVID-19 vaccine are being administered, conspiracy theorists are stepping up their efforts to cast doubt on the cure. Outrageous claims about the vaccine.
1, COVID isn't dangerous. 2, the vaccines are dangerous.
And even about top doctor Tony Fauci.
It's very much tied to Facebook groups that emerged in the early 2010s.
We'll get a reality check from 2 experts tracking this stubborn set of myths and lies. Then, this week's winners and losers in the media. See if you agree with what the editors of Mediaite have to say. From the Law&Crime Trial Network, this is Brian Ross Investigates. Good evening. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to our viewers on Facebook Live. I'm Brian Ross, joined tonight, as always, by my colleague, Rhonda Schwartz. And Rhonda, we begin with new developments in the infamous case of the Zodiac serial killer. He eluded police and the FBI for more than 50 years, going back to the late 1960s and 70s, when he was very big news.
School children are nice targets. I shall wipe out a school bus some morning, shoot out the tires, and then pick off the kiddies as they come bounding out. That was the threat of the Zodiac Killer.
Search goes on in San Francisco for the man known as the Zodiac Killer.
Bits and pieces of information, leads and tips from people who want to help catch the Zodiac Killer have been pouring into police headquarters here at the Hall of Justice for the last few days.
And at the time, the Zodiac Killer sent a coded message to the San Francisco Chronicle, which only now has been broken. The code has been broken, but Rhonda, not by the FBI.
That's right. The FBI acknowledged the mystery has been solved, but not by them, by 3 private citizens working together from around the world, 3 passionate cryptographers, code breakers from Belgium, Australia, and right here in Virginia.
Thanks, Rhonda. Now we're joined by the guy who led the team, David Oranchak in Roanoke, Virginia, and also by former FBI agent and crime profiler Brad Garrett. And David, before we get to you, let's take a look at the YouTube video you made showing just how you did it.
One had words like, "Hope you are trying to catch me," and "or the gas chamber." At that time, the rest of the plain text looked like garbage and nonsense, like many other thousands of solutions I've seen over the years. But these phrases turned out to be our way into the real solution. So I plugged those into AZ Decrypt using what's called a crib feature. Boom! Suddenly got a really clean message. And the phrase, "that wasn't me on the TV show," pops out.
And David, when that moment came, what was your feeling? What was the reaction?
Oh, at that moment, it was incredible because I had been working on this thing for so long. I had gotten used to the solutions not going anywhere. And then to see that phrase, that was when I immediately had that switch in my mind go to, oh my God, this is probably on the right track.
And it was on the right track. Brad Garrett, do you think this can lead finally to the identity of the serial killer, the Zodiac serial killer?
I don't think so, Brian. I mean, it doesn't give you any specific information about who he is, where he's from, even what his motivations are, other than there's a little bit of, fantasy, about slaves and the afterlife and so forth. But the key to this translation, Brian, is really it becomes into play if you actually figure out who the Zodiac is. Because with other writings, with possibly an interview, this translation of this encryption by David and others could be key.
Absolutely. David, a question for you from Rhonda Schwartz. Rhonda?
David, you've been working on this a long time. What got you started on this? How long have you been working on this? Why have you been doing it so long?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been working on this for about 14 years, on and off. You know, you go through cycles of trying out different ideas and then getting frustrated and then taking a break and then thinking of some other ideas or working with people in the cryptography community, and then they come up with ideas and then you collaborate. And then sometimes it goes somewhere, sometimes it doesn't. And then it kind of goes like that for a while. And eventually, you know, just through sheer luck and persistence, we ended up coming to this solution.
Brad Garrett, when you read this message, you get the sense this man is not an idiot.
Oh, he's clearly not an idiot, but he does seek attention. I mean, Brian, think about this. He writes encrypted notes that took, David, I think, could tell us more, but a lot of hours to create this. There were no computers back then. So he does that. He sends it to 3 newspapers so that they will then engage him. You know, serial killers have a lot of different motivations. My sense is that the Zodiac is driven just as much from the power that he gets from the attention and sort of manipulating law enforcement and the media than he does actually killing people.
David, one of the keys when you tried to solve this was the fact that he referred to a TV show that he wasn't on. Here's that clip of the TV show back then on a local San Francisco station.
And then we'll come back and I'll give you a specific answer to this question, are you going to the gas chamber? Huh?
I want to kill those kids.
So, David, why was that important, what he had to say?
The reason it's important, at least from a cryptography perspective, was there's a lot of times when you're trying to solve a code where words will pop out and you'll fool yourself into thinking that you're on the right track, but the words have nothing to do with the actual correct answer to the cipher. And so when I saw that he was referring specifically to that TV show, because I was familiar enough with the case, I realized that 2 weeks prior to that cipher being mailed out, there was the Jim Dunbar broadcast, which included that caller who was referencing the gas chamber. And so to see those phrases pop out of the solution was further confirmation that cryptographically speaking, we were on the right track.
Well, David, what does it tell you about the nature of this code, about the intelligence of this man and he liked to play with the police, it seemed?
Most definitely. He spent a lot of time kind of creating this persona of himself in the letters. Whether it accurately reflected him is, I guess, up for debate, but it does appear clear that he really liked all of the attention and liked people to be afraid of him. And it almost seems like he was trying to set himself up as a kind of a notorious comic book style villain, because he had, you know, all of these bomb making plans in his letters. He had all of these different schemes going on. He was writing cryptograms, sending threatening letters, taking pieces of the bloody shirt from one of the victims and so on. So he was doing all he could to kind of project this fearsome image of himself.
And Brad Garrett, the FBI says the case is ongoing. What steps can be taken now based on this great development from David and his team?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, the reality, Brian, is that this is a local case in California. So we'll see where the San Francisco police want to take it. I think many times when new pieces of information, even if they don't lead you to the killer, come out, it sort of puts pressure on law enforcement to take another look. So maybe the San Francisco police, in conjunction with the FBI, could maybe sort of unearth where we're going here to a possible resolution. Keep in mind, this case is 51 years old. The odds that the Zodiac Killer are still alive, I think, are remote.
Absolutely. Brad Garrett, former FBI agent and crime profiler, thank you so much. And David Aranchak, congratulations. Thank you for being with us here tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the COVID-19 vaccine finally arrives as efforts to debunk it are pushed by conspiracy theorists. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. The COVID-19 vaccine has now arrived and is being administered, even as the lies and myths about it continue to be spread.
Thousands upon thousands of experts speaking out, warning not to use this vaccine. What's happening, of course, is they're being censored.
Whichever people get the vaccine, that's the real danger. They get the vaccine, they're going to die. They're going to get sick.
Once you take that vaccine, you cannot detox. You cannot get it out of your body. Never.
We're joined now by Emerson Brooking from the Digital Forensic Research Lab and Imran Ahmed from the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Thank you both for joining us. Mr. Ahmed, let me start with you. Is it still out there? Is it still thriving, this kind of anti-vaccine hate?
We're seeing a proliferation of anti-vaccine narratives spreading on social media. In particular, that's the space which they use. And actually, we found that the audiences have been growing substantially over the pandemic, but we've seen a resurgence since the vaccine has been announced.
And give me a sense, Mr. Brooking, of what kind of efforts are they making? How are they able to get such a big audience?
It gets such a big audience because one conspiracy theory invariably feeds another. It's the same communities who initially spread misinformation and conspiratorialism about the severity of COVID-19, about the death toll, about the cures for the virus, who have now shifted to spreading misinformation about the vaccine.
Mr. Aidan, what are the key points they're trying to make or put over?
Well, there's lots of different subtypes and lots of different individual conspiracies, but fundamentally it comes down to 3 points that they're trying to get across. 1, COVID isn't dangerous. 2, that vaccines are dangerous. And 3, that you can't trust the scientists and the medics. You can't trust the intent that they have.
Wearing the mask literally activates your own virus. You're getting sick from your own reactivated coronavirus expressions.
They have no way of telling you or anyone what the long-term effects are because they just developed it.
And then you have the vaccine, and that's going to cause a lot of people to die, and they're going to use that as a false flag to say, see, we told you second wave's coming.
All 3 of these are fundamentally untrue.
They focused a lot on Dr. Fauci, haven't they?
Well, they'll pick whichever, they're quite opportunistic, almost like a virus themselves. They pick the strongest host. And Dr. Fauci, because of his fame, because of his notoriety, they latch onto him and seek to parasitically take some of his energy, his fame, and use that to catapult their own misinformation narratives, their virus.
Mr. Brooking, without Facebook and other social media sites, would it exist at all?
It would exist, but their severity would not be remotely the same. We forget that the anti-vaccine movement, the strength of it, is a modern phenomenon. It's very much tied to Facebook groups that emerged in the early 2010s, anti-vaccine communities which sprang out of a wider alternative health ecosystem. Facebook groups which began to cast doubt on vaccines, which began to promote science that falsely tied vaccination to autism. And we saw it first in measles outbreaks across California as the effective vaccination rates among new kindergarten classes began to decline because of the spread of Facebook misinformation.
Mr. Ahmed, these are many of them high profile, lots of glitz attached to the videos, but not all of them.
Absolutely. I mean, you find your big Hollywood production values in some of them, but actually it's the smaller ones. It's the ones that are produced with perhaps a mother pretending that that her child has autism as a result of measles, or the stuff that's produced by very pernicious, very clever, very lo-fi, but deliberately so producers.
And do you think, are these true believers, or is there a financial motivation for what they're doing?
Well, I think it's a mixture of both. Some of the big ones absolutely are snake oil salesmen, hucksters, in a very old sense, but some of them are just misinformed people. Either way, the end result of the misinformation they spread is people take risks that put everyone in society at risk of harm. And so our recommendation has been that the key actors, the key bad guys are deplatformed. And the social media companies themselves have said they are willing to take action against people who serially abuse the terms of service on their platforms. To date, however, they really haven't.
And Mr. Brooking, have they come too late? Facebook and others are starting to take down many of these videos, but they were up for quite a while. They got quite a foothold.
There's been a real disconnect, I think, between the goals that these companies announce and their actions so far. Shortly after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, both Facebook and Twitter pledged to label and reduce the prominence of COVID-19 misinformation. But they made that claim, but quickly COVID-19 misinformation was spread by President Trump. It was spread by powerful political actors, and the companies largely declined to enforce their own standards. There is a new concerted push here. Facebook just announced that they would be removing misinformation related to COVID-19 vaccination, and that's a promising step in the right direction. But the fact is, right before this interview, I can go on any number of Facebook groups and find the same sort of objectionable content that we're talking about.
And Mr. Ahmed, what do you think has been the role of President Trump in spreading these kinds of conspiracy theories?
Well, I don't like to finger an individual politician, but it is clear that that contributing to the anti-elitist, faux populist, conspiracist mindset that is now infecting populations, not just in the US. Let's not forget, we're seeing this around the world, whether it's India and Modi, whether it's Europe and the IFD in Germany, the Front National in France. We are seeing these sorts of movements spreading. And they are particularly digital in nature. They're particularly conspiracist in nature. And we've seen them all weaponizing COVID misinformation and vaccine misinformation for their own ends.
Why do Americans love conspiracy so much, do you think?
Well, conspiracy theories are driven by something we call epistemic anxieties. It means an anxiety not just about information itself, but where to get good information. And one of the real problems has been that authorities that we once trusted, the scientific authorities, Dr. Fauci himself, who's given his life to public service, they find their integrity, their probity, their motivations challenged. And it's a particularly dangerous thing. It's a very modern phenomenon, the fundamental challenging of everything that we hold to be true and who we can trust. It's corrosive to a democracy, it's corrosive to liberalism, and we really need to see it end.
Mr. Brooking, would you call it the United States of paranoia?
I think that's a good way to describe it. I think that the frequency of conspiracy theories is directly related to moments of great alienation and great fear. And unfortunately, we're going through one of those periods now. And we see that the attractiveness and spread of these sorts of pernicious theories has increased accordingly.
Emerson Brooking and Imran Ahmed, thank you both for joining us tonight. Coming up next, this week's winners and losers in the media. Will Fox News finally be held to account? You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. Time now for this week's winners and losers in the media, as chosen by the editors of Mediaite. And we're joined by the editor-in-chief of Mediaite, Aidan McLaughlin. Mediaite, like Law and Crime Network, is part of the Dan Abrams media empire. And Aidan, hardly a week goes by without Fox News being criticized by you and by others. But now there's more than just criticism.
That's right. Fox News has actually been sent a demand for retractions and a legal notice by Smartmatic, which is a voting systems technology firm. It's been the subject of conspiracy theories from President Donald Trump and his allies for some time now. The allegations hold that Smartmatic, basically, it's a voting system. They claim that it was used to switch votes from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. Now, that allegation and the conspiracy theories surrounding it are pretty baseless. But they have been floated on Fox News frequently in the last couple of weeks. Now, Smartmatic has sent a demand for retractions of statements made on Fox News regarding its system. And that demand lists dozens of comments from Fox News hosts like Lou Dobbs, Maria Bartiromo, and also Fox News guests like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, who basically made these claims that Smartmatic was involved in this vast international conspiracy involving Hugo Chavez and who is the late Venezuelan leader, and George Soros to swing the election, to steal it from Donald Trump and give it to Joe Biden. That is nonsense, obviously. We know that. But a lot of the claims to support it, such as the fact that Smartmatic even had an outsized role in the election, are false. Smartmatic was involved in only one county in the United States in the 2020 November election, and that was Los Angeles, which is obviously left-leaning. So this demand got sent out last week. We just obtained it and reported on it today. We have yet to hear Fox News' response to it.
It's interesting that the Fox News has been criticized again and again, and its hosts and guests have talked about this with almost no pushback from anybody else. They keep saying, and Fox News continues to tolerate putting out information that is provably false. That's the issue here, isn't it? Provably false.
Well, that's
with any kind of background check.
So wild about this. You say we have made Fox News a loser a lot recently. And it's true, but it's because since the election, Fox News has been leaning into these insane, absurd, baseless conspiracy theories about the election, because a lot of their audience has been told by President Donald Trump that he actually won, which is obviously false. Now, Smartmatic, this is the first time that we have an actual company that has been subject of false claims made on Fox actually hitting back. And now they've given Fox News a deadline of tomorrow to make a retraction of all these claims. I'd be very surprised if Fox News did that. But Smartmatic is saying if they don't, they're going to actually take this into court, and that they've hired defamation lawyers to bring a lawsuit against Fox News.
A day of reckoning coming for Fox News. Aidan, thanks so much. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Thanks to our team at Law&Crime.